Hey y'all, it's getting dark, but I wanted to come out here and talk to you briefly about the garden. Of course, that's what this channel is all about. So I went Sunday and paid for the dogwood that I picked out at Grandma's Gardens. I'm super excited about it. I've seen a lot of comments on my last video, people concerned it might get too big, a lot of people saying that they have one or their neighbor has one and it didn't get much larger than the woman at the garden center estimated. So I think we're going to be pretty good. I've also seen comments that they prune up rather easily, so we are going to go in that direction. I've already paid for it. It's coming into the garden. And then I am going to pick it up in a couple weeks. They're going to hold it for me because I'm not ready to plant it right now and I don't have a way to get it to the house right now. So I want to make sure the garden bed is prepared. I will probably dig the hole before I even go pick it up. And I'm not sure if I will bring you along for that process. Me digging holes that big in this clay soil is not a pretty process. I'm not pretty when I do it. And it's a struggle, just let me say. We planted big trees here before. The maple I have back here was a really large tree, root ball, and then these oaks were smaller, but they were also very difficult to dig because of our heavy clay soil. So that was a really big root ball, and I've got to get that dug and figure out where I'm putting that. Today, as the sun is setting and the light is beautiful right now, I wanted to walk you around and tell you about why this time of year makes me nervous. So a week or so ago, I went around to check on shrubs. I wanted to confirm that there were no issues with death, damage over winter. So all we do when we do that is we go up to the branch. These trees, these oak trees I was particularly concerned about, you can actually see now that they're setting buds. And if you see that they're setting buds, like these right here, you're good to go. But you can also just take your thumbnail and scratch. You shouldn't use a knife or anything. If your thumbnail's good enough, you don't want to make a big hole, but if you scratch and you can see there's a little bit of green right here, that means your plant is healthy and you're good to go for the season. Now we still have a month or so of winter out here in Ohio, but the worst is gone. So that means that I'm going to have really good success with some of my plants. I've had some people asking about the new hydrangea I planted last year called 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲. It's a new type of hydrangea called Cascade. It's a new species, actually, I believe, and they haven't selected a species name yet, but it blooms along the entire length of the stem and has a wide arching habit. I did the scratch test to it the other day and it's doing really good. For those of you who may have purchased this hydrangea last year off of my recommendation, it wasn't really a recommendation, but it was a new variety that I wanted to try out. Proven Winners actually moved it to a zone 6, so it should be hardy in my zone and I shouldn't have any issues with it dying off. I mean, there may be some damage over winter in any winter, but it is supposed to be hardy to my zone now, so that shouldn't be an issue. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about is boxwoods. So it will be time to start pruning boxwoods in the next month. I don't do it too early because our frosts are really erratic, and when you prune boxwoods, depending on how much you prune off, you can expose delicate undergrowth that is not as frost hardy as the foliage you just cut off and create damage. One thing, and one of the reasons I am planting sprinter boxwoods in my garden, they don't tend to color up as much. So you can look at this hedge right here and clearly see which ones are wintergreen boxwoods and which ones are sprinter. This brown one right here, wintergreen. Sprinter, looks pretty good, little browning. The one next to it, wintergreen, browning, and death. And everywhere around there has the same issue. So I've mentioned that this is an alternating boxwood hedge, wintergreen, sprinter, just because I didn't have enough and I had the wintergreen left over. I'm going to give these another year to settle in. And if they're not performing really good and I keep having this die-off issue, that's why I originally moved them to begin with. They were originally up here in the vegetable garden, and then I had a lot of die-off 2 to 3 years ago. And I pulled them out of the ground and replaced those with sprinter boxwoods. And I find it really interesting because I got to looking at the wintergreen boxwood the other day, and where it came from, it was found on a field right here in Dayton, Ohio, a long time ago and brought to market. And I'm like, why is it no better at winter damage than it is if it was found right here in Ohio in Dayton? So that's just a fun fact and frustration, really, because I can't imagine why at this point this plant was selected to be really hardy up here, honestly. I have not been really impressed with it. It's the only winter greens I have in my garden. All the others are Sprinter, Winter Gem, Green Mountain, and these Green Tower that I picked up last year. So not really impressed with Winter Green. It is an older variety, and that die-off is particularly concerning. So that shrub is not dead. It will come back, but there's a lot I'll need to cut out of it because of that death. So we're going to give it a little bit. We'll give it a year or more. If this happens again next year, I'm going to start replacing those with Sprinters and just deal with it, because I'm not about a fussy plant. You know that. I've mentioned it several times. Fussy plants I don't deal with. So we're not going to deal with that one much longer if it keeps it up. This week is supposed to be absolutely beautiful, and I am going to come out here and do more of my perennial cleanup. I need to finish cutting back my roses, and I need to move these raspberries and blackberries that I talked about to my new Vigo garden bed, so I might be assembling that this week. I picked up some raised bed mix from Costco when I was there the other day, specifically for that reason, and I'm going to put it back in the mini orchard as well. And then I need to get working on this spot, which still may be a little bit, as I said, I'm not rushing to pick up that dogwood yet, but I do think I will have to be moving it a little more towards this side of the bed, this way, right here, towards me, because I mentioned there's a sprinkler line right here. So we will probably end up moving this black lace elderberry to the corner fence back there. I did bring y'all along last year when I planted a Gatsby Star oak leaf hydrangea. Beautiful hydrangea. I grew it from a 3.5 inch, 4 inch pot from Hertz Gardens, and it produced a ton of growth the first year that I had it in a container, and I grew it on in a container for a full year before planting it out in the landscape. Well, last year when I planted it in the landscape, it did terribly. It died really instantly in just a few weeks. And these hydrangeas are supposed to be able to take full sun in our area. They're listed to take full sun. I know oak leaves are kind of iffy as to whether they can do that, but I had it on drip. And it still, I think I did the scratch test on it. The wood is extremely hard. I don't think any of it survived. It could potentially come back from the ground. So we're not going to be digging it up and disposing of it. If I do dig it up earlier in the season before I start seeing any growth, I will put it in a container because I don't want to throw that plant away. It was really beautiful and I could find somewhere else to put it if it does survive. But that was just really disappointing because I nurtured that plant from a 3.5 inch container. I was really excited to get it into the garden. I don't have many oak leaf hydrangeas because a lot of them need that shade, and that's not something my garden offers in its young stage. But there's a lot of other small oak leaf hydrangeas that I want to incorporate this year. There's a lot of other like 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲. The beautiful thing about oak leaf hydrangeas is they have really interesting foliage in fall. For one, they typically turn like a red color. Their leaves are shaped like oak leaves, thus the name. And they have exfoliating bark in winter, which is really gorgeous. And so I want to incorporate more oak leaf hydrangeas. Right now, if that one didn't make it, and that was Gatsby Star by Proven Winners, I have one called Little Honey. And I've actually got this one at the same time that I got the Gatsby Star, and it has not been very productive at all. Little Honey stays really small. That's why it's called Little Honey. But the growth that it's put on has been really insignificant over the past 2 years. And so it's struggled as well. I don't know what's going on. So my luck with oak leaf hydrangeas has not been as great as my luck with other types of hydrangeas, and that's one of the reasons I've been a little hesitant to add more to my garden. But I'm going to try and do that this year. The willow's getting larger. I can probably stick an oak leaf under it. There's some areas out front or on the north side of the house that I could potentially add some oak leaf hydrangeas to as well. And so that's just something we are going to be evaluating this year to see where I can add more oak leaf hydrangeas to my garden, because they are beautiful and they have beautiful winter interest. One good thing about adding this Cornus Cusa dogwood here, which a lot of people were concerned about it blocking the windows as well. Our house is western facing. We have to keep the blinds down in the summer. It is like a sauna in our sunroom if we didn't do that. And so shade, I'm not concerned about blocking view. There are windows all along the back side of our house. And if it adds some shade both to the patio, in the house, and in the garden, most importantly, really, I will be really happy with that, because I want to start introducing shade plants to this backyard as some of these bigger items grow and develop and cast some shade. So that'll be a good option here that will create some shade, and it will kind of flow over the branches eventually over this fountain. And I just think it'll be really lovely, creating a shady space potentially for future shade plants, which I really love hostas. You don't see them much in my backyard, and if you've been following me the past year, you probably haven't seen a whole lot in my garden because they're all out front in the east facing side of my home and under the big tree we have out front. So that's really the only place I have them right now. I did plant some bigger ones under this willow last fall. We'll see how they do, and if they burn really badly, I don't know. It's about time to start turning our attention to the vegetable garden. So it's possible that this week I will be removing these plants that I healed in from the raised beds. I also have lots of daylilies that are coming up. So if you watched that video last year, I had the daylilies that I had to dig up when the fence was installed. I healed them into these garden beds, and they're actually starting to come up. And so I want to get those out and somewhere else in the garden sooner rather than later, to not disrupt their bloom cycle best I can. So I'm going to be planting some flowers probably in this Vigo garden bed, and then the rest of the stuff will house vegetables, and then where I had tomatoes will be my dahlias this year, if, you know, they survive storage. That's yet to be determined, and I haven't checked on them. So do as I say, not as I do, ain't that right? This week I would also like to get started, if the weather is good enough all week. Daylight savings time, by the way, ruined me. I don't know what it is. As I get older, it just becomes more and more difficult to adjust to that time. I love it because here in Ohio, which was a transition when I moved up here, it stays bright or light until almost 10 o'clock at night. And so I can get a ton done in the summer around here. But considering the days are longer, and it's currently 7:41, so we already have really good light all the way to almost 8 o'clock, which means after work gardening time shall commence. But I need to start edging this bed and decide how deep I want it and prepare it ASAP for all the perennials I'm getting in that I will go over in a video probably at the end of this month. I think I promised it at the beginning of March. It's not working out that way. I want to make sure I get all the varieties that I'm mostly putting in my garden before I do that video. So expect it probably late March, early April, depending on when I get all that stuff together. But I want to bring out this bed and probably make it at least 6 feet. I'm afraid right now it's probably like I probably won't be able to make it 6 feet in all locations, but it's probably only 3 to 4 feet now, if that. And I just want kind of a deeper border. I also don't want to take up more of the yard, but you know, we'll see. This whole area right here is going to be planting space too. So along with this little strip I have right here, we're going to have all of this to connect to this maple bed here that I'm going to swing around, basically around. Let's see if I can get that on camera. Right. Oh, it's okay. So right where these planters start, it's going to come right here and connect, or about where behind this red ball is for the dogs. And then I'm going to do a pathway to the shed, and that means I'll have a pretty good planting space right here, and then a pathway and a little planting space on the other side of it. Those are my initial thoughts anyway. That's not a whole lot of edging to do. It just takes time. That means I will also have to move the sprinkler heads a little further out than what I did in my video that I shot last year. Thus are the joys of being a gardener. So it won't take very long. It's just part of the process, and I'll just have to do that in the coming weeks. But it was a beautiful day today. I hope y'all are warming up. I know a lot of you are in colder places than I am, and I've seen a lot of people, you're working out in shorts. Well, it was really cold here this weekend, and so the weather is just being sporadic and erratic as it is in Ohio. And so I hope some of you are seeing some relief from your winter weather, and you can start enjoying us and the sunshine here soon. Thank you guys for joining me, and remember, in a world full of hate, be a light. Take care, everyone. Bye.